You're set, Mr. Chairman. You're muted. There we are.
All
You're all
set?
set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. Want to welcome everybody to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission for July 22nd, 2020, 7 p.m. If everybody could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Craig, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Claffey,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Linares,
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Here.
Commissioner Gill, Commissioner Woods, Commissioner Braverman. I know Commissioner Braverman's here. I saw him, so I'll check him off. Commissioner Haggerty
Here.
and Chairman Payne.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We have approval of the agenda. I don't see we have any changes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, if you could read the procedures for the public hearing, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't bring the box home with me. I just brought my notes for the public hearing. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
No problem. We will
Improvise.
be allowing public to speak at any time. If the public has a question, James, you can interrupt me. Do we have any public on, James?
At this point, we only have NCTV.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Why don't we go to Glenn, if you want to give us a short report to start us off with?
Commissioner Claffey has his hand raised at the moment.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Claffey.
Can people mute if they're not talking? I heard birds in the background and it kind of
Mhm.
would cause a undue sounds. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is Glenn, can you give us a brief overview?
I'm happy to, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me?
It's faint.
So I'm not sure what's going on here. Hang on a second. I got,
Very faint.
maybe
That's better.
that better now?
Better? Yes.
No? All right, I'll give it a shot. I apologize if there's any audio issues going on. I hope it works for the recording. James, if you could start the PowerPoint, that would be great. There we go. Mr. Chairman, tonight is the public hearing on adoption for the commission to consider adoption of the plan of conservation and development. As you know, the commission's been working on this for some time now in terms of public meeting and input. Because of COVID, it seems like it's been a lot longer than perhaps a normal process, et cetera. But again, tonight is the culmination of the commission's work over the past year or so in terms of preparing a plan of conservation and development. If I could have the next slide. The plan of conservation and development, as the commission knows, is an advisory document used by the commission and other town boards and agencies to help make decisions about a community's physical development. It also addresses issues related to economic and social development. But the most important part of a POCD is that it outlines strategies to help get us where the community wants to go in terms of its physical development, what type of community it wants to be. I think at the bottom of the slide, you can see the fact that Newington has been preparing plans for its future for years. And many of the recommendations and decisions that became part of that plan have guided the community over the years. And that's again why it's an important document for what will likely happen over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. The Plan of Conservation and Development, as the commission is aware, has 6 main parts to it, but 4 of them are really the key parts to it. The plan starts off with an introduction. It then talks about 4 major strategic themes. Conservation is things we want to preserve or protect in the community. Sustainability is about how to adapt to future changes that are likely to occur. Development is how we want to guide growth and change. And then the 4th key part is infrastructure strategies overall. And these are services and facilities that help support our community. And finally, there's a conclusion to the plan. Next slide, please. The introduction, I think a couple of key things in this section of the plan. Population growth in Newington is projected to continue at a slower rate than it has been in the past. But again, with changes going on in the world today, we'll have to wait and see whether or not those projections come to be. But regardless of how the number of people in Newington changes, one of the trends which is pretty remarkable in Newington overall is the changing age composition of the community. And it's not uncommon for other communities in Connecticut to see an aging population, more residents in advanced years. And this really starts to change the types of services and facilities a community might anticipate needing in the community in the future. And that's a theme, I think, which actually follows through the plan in a couple of different ways. We undertook public meetings and interactions to get feedback from the community, and the residents told us the things that were most important to them. This is about preserving and enhancing the character of the community, maintaining a strong tax base, enhancing the town center, addressing challenges and opportunities at the transit and train station, proposed train station, maintaining community facilities, addressing traffic, and then implementing the POCD overall. And for that reason, we organized the plan around, again, conservation, sustainability, development, and infrastructure strategies overall. Next slide, please. Under the conservation strategies, there's 3 key chapters here. The first of which is how we might want to protect natural resources in the community. And every chapter in the plan, or almost every chapter in the plan, I should say, has a map to identify the location of the particular things that we're talking about in the plan, the recommendations, location of key resources in the community. In addition to protecting natural resources, this section of the plan recommends preserving open space. The plan makes recommendations in terms of trying to improve or enhance a greenway within the community to improve overall character and accessibility. And then the 3rd major chapter under the conservation strategies is community character overall, and the resources in town that really contribute to character, and things, again, we should try to protect or preserve going forward. Next slide, please. The next major thematic element of the plan is about sustainability, and this is sort of 2 concepts, the first of which is sustainability. And this is how we can be greener in the future and be cognizant of the fact that we could be more efficient and economic in the way that we use a lot of our resources in terms of energy and generating waste and use of water and other things like that. And the plan advocates for these types of strategies. And also the other part of that is becoming more resilient. The world may change in the future in ways that we can't yet visualize. Nobody saw COVID coming. And when things like this happen, it's wise for community to be adaptable and resilient to be able to respond to new challenges and opportunities that come along. And this section of the plan addresses that. Next slide, please. The development strategies in the plan are really perhaps one of the most important parts. When these documents were being prepared for communities in decades past, they were called plans of development, because this is how we might want to guide growth or change in the community. And the sections of the plan which address this are, first of all, to strengthen Newington Center. It is the focal point in our community, in many respects, the heart and soul of the community. The plan recommends that we implement strategies to make it a stronger, more relevant place in the lives of people. And because there may be some opportunities that arise there with some key properties in the town center over the next 5 or 10 years or so, or perhaps even sooner, there's a significant opportunity for Newington to guide growth and development in the Newington Center area. There's a whole chapter which identifies opportunity sites within Newington and recommends strategies and directions to take advantage of these opportunity sites. There's a comment in the sidebar in the plan that it's going to be harder and harder for Newington in the future to grow its grand list. Our land is mostly developed. So the question is, how do we get more value out of the land that we have? And these opportunity sites may provide an opportunity to grow our grand list, but also to create strong places with a sense of place, mixed use, pedestrian friendly, transit oriented. And so this chapter of the plan addresses those issues. There's a chapter on promoting economic development, which in this plan talks not only about business and industrial development, but also housing as a way to grow our grand list. And then chapter also on guiding residential development and addressing housing needs in the community. And those are key and important chapters as well. Next slide, please. The last major theme of the plan is infrastructure strategies. And this is sort of three key areas containing multiple maps. The first of which is addressing community facility needs in the community, continuing to maintain what we have, make improvements as appropriate for how the community is growing and changing. There's a number of recommendations related to transportation, both vehicular transportation on the roadway system and managing that for safety and capacity and just taking care of the pavement. That's a major part of our municipal assets. And then enhancing walking, biking, transit, and rail for the future. Lastly, there's a chapter on maintaining and improving utility infrastructure, water, sewer, cellular, 5G, wireless services, and also wired internet to improve the capacity of internet, et cetera, overall. Next slide, please. And so the final part of the plan, is the conclusion part, if you will, is the recommendations throughout the plan to use the policies. Every chapter in the plan identifies policies. This is the blue box you see on the screen. The policy sections identify what the recommendation or strategy in the plan is. And then the column on the right identifies the leaders and partners. These are the people that would be involved or be responsible for implementing that element of the plan. And then each chapter also contains action steps. And down at the bottom, we see the pink boxes with the red text. And these are actual action steps that the commission can undertake. So policies tend to be somewhat reactive in nature when a proposal would come before the commission or commission was deliberating an activity. These are the guidelines you might use, but action steps are specific work items the commission can pick up, undertake, and move ahead with. And there's also other boards or commissions that might be involved in that. So those are the key elements of the plan. There is a focus on implementation and these recommendations in terms of policies and action steps. And for those reasons, I hope it will be a useful guide for Newington for the future, just as past plans have been helpful in the past. Next slide, please. So that concludes just an overview of the plan. I'm prepared if the commission has any questions or any questions from the community to go into more detail. But that's a quick summary, if you will, of the plan and the recommendations within it. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Glenn. I'm going to go to commissioners to see if any commissioners have any questions for Glenn or for the committee. Anthony, go ahead.
I had a few questions. I don't know how you want to kind of walk through this because I've read over it again and looked at a few things. And, one of the questions, Glenn, I came up with in the beginning was look on page of the POCD that I have. It's page like 40, 41. We talk about the importance of mixed use in both, not just buildings, but in what the building does. And it seems a lot of focus has been on the town's, downtown in this POCD. And I just trying to understand, you talked about mixed use buildings are a plus, but we want to discourage a mixed use site. And I just want to kind of, for this question, get your ideas on, with our tight constraints of our downtown, it's not like a blank slate or a canvas. Most of our downtown is 1 story right now. There are 2-story, but I don't think there's much more than 2-story. Yes, we do have the exceptions of the apartment building, but with the size of what we had to work with in the downtown area, I mean, putting them, looking at page 41 there, the first thing you see is a mixed-use building. Most of them are 3 stories. But then when you look at the mixed-use site, which is a more broader picture, you have, a nice combination of 1-story, 2-story, and then yes, it gets up into a little higher story. But why are you saying get away from the mixed-use site and be more encouraged to the mixed-use building?
I think the town center is actually not that large an area. It's actually fairly compact. I think the key change which could occur in the town center in the near future are the 2 sites that may become available for redevelopment. I don't think Newington is ready for what West Hartford did in terms of Blueback Square, but I think the introduction of a walkable, pedestrian-friendly area could pay big dividends for Newington overall in the town center area. And that really involves a focus on the streetscape. So the zoning regulations in Newington right now today already allow for mixed use buildings of 3 stories in the town center area. So really all we're talking about is continuing that, possibly even allowing for some additional height here. But a mixed use building makes effective use of the real estate capacity that's available. We'd like to have business uses on the first floor facing the street to create street activity, be it restaurants or stores or other things that create an activity area that other people want to go visit and spend time and spend money at. That's one of the things that will strengthen the town center. And then the upper floors can be used for residential uses. If the remote commuting continues in terms of people working at home, et cetera, then the downtown could be a fairly quiet place, but upstairs buildings will create the opportunity for activity in this particular place. So the most important part, I think, for town centers and vibrant town centers is to have an active street. And that's why if you have like a 1-story retail building on the street, it doesn't really take advantage of the opportunity to animate the street with people and activity. So generally speaking, a 2-story building would be, I think, perhaps a step in that direction.
Okay.
But I also like to back up just for a second, Anthony, if I can, because I think the idea also in this chapter, and it's just one chapter in the plan, so I don't think it dominates the whole plan, but it really talks about a process for involving residents and property owners and other people and coming up with a vision for the town center, so that what happens there is Newington's vision for its center rather than something else. So I certainly wanted to illustrate the difference here for the commission in terms of mixed use buildings versus mixed use sites. But more than anything else, I'd like Newington to pick the center for itself that it would like to have in the future.
Okay.
Well, I understand that, but I think, Anthony, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, but I mean, if somebody came in with a single use building over there, I don't think we should be discouraging them. It's still development. And so I think we have to be careful there. Anthony, could you do you want to finish your question?
Yeah, and then on that, because I mean, this kind of goes in, if you go to page, I had a few questions on 42, but on page 42 where you've asked like certain things that might be a site plan, but might be a special permit. I think I don't know if we want to move certain things because zoning laws are so interchangeable. We can change something just like we did last meeting about, special permits for distilleries, et cetera. I don't know how in depth the commission feels on, flip flopping some of the things that were in red to green and some of the things that are green to red. One of them to me is, and I'm using it because it's COVID, the temporary seasonal outdoor dining, we have it as a special permit, which is voted very been very good for us to control just people putting a patio out. So I don't know how much the commission, if any other commissioners have any comments on changing some of the things on page 42, but and we can get to that later. But one of the bigger concerns I have, and it comes up in this section of town center, is parking. And on page 46, we want to, in one way, under the policies, improve the public parking area. But then under the action steps, it says evaluate to lower the parking requirements. And I think our regulations already give us the authority to, across the whole town, and not just specific to one area, to lower parking. On a busy day, you go to downtown Newington currently, it's hard to get a parking space that is, close to where you want to be. You usually have to end up parking in the back and walking an amount of time, which is fine for me, but maybe not every resident. In the parking thing, West Hartford did a parking change with their Blueback and their new, when they did Blueback over, and now they're having a huge parking problem at Blueback, and it's affecting businesses and it's affecting growth. So I'm kind of understanding why in one way we want to lessen parking, but in another thing you're saying to us, like, well, you need to expand parking or have better parking. I'm not a proponent for lowering the parking amounts in an action plan. I'd rather see it as it already is. If a business comes to us and wants to open up, and they already have that right to say, hey, we want less parking spaces because here are our numbers and can we meet that? And we've done that in the past. So I'm trying to understand your parking, taking away parking, adding parking.
I think parking is one of the biggest challenges that downtown areas have. So if we look at the Berlin Turnpike, our parking ratios are built for uses where each site is functionally a lollipop. There's one driveway in and you park in that parking lot. You want to go to another site, you got to drive out and move to another one. So each site has to have parking for its peak demand. When you get to a town center area, you have a situation where the residential uses might have some parking, but they're maybe parked at night, and then during the day, the businesses use the parking spaces. So we can find all sorts of efficiencies.
Okay.
Part of my career, I worked for private development companies. And what I discovered as part of that process is that parking is often the biggest impediment to new development and activity, because the issue is it chews up so much land area that the space left for a building is not everything that it could or should be. And so if we can find ways to be more efficient with parking in Newington Center, I think we have the ability to spur economic growth and activity there, rather than have people coming to the commission and asking for an exception. If it's possible to give an exception right up front, you're basically giving people the green light for development rather than a yellow or a caution light where they have to come and ask for permission. And I think development's becoming pretty competitive these days. And I think Newington is got such a strategic location. I think you're poised for growth opportunities. And I think these opportunity sites, one of which is the town center, are an area that we can recast our thinking to try to create these sorts of opportunities. So, I mean, if you can back off on some of these requirements in ways which make sense,
Yep. Okay.
I think it could serve you well. And so I think one of the things that I'd like to suggest is if there's specific verbs in here which are too strong, then I think we should soften those verbs. And for example, back on page, when you're talking about the chart on page 42 in terms of the green and the red, and we'd identify those as possible considerations. I mean, the commission does not have to make these changes. A POCD is an advisory document. But my hope again would be that 10 years from now, the Newington Center is a different place and is functioning as the town center it used to be. Nowadays, people sort of bypass the town center and go to businesses and things in other locations. And if we can bring some of that activity back, I think it'd be a real shot in the arm for Newington Center.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. And Anthony, if you could hold off for 1 minute, we have Commissioner Fox has a question, and then Commissioner Braverman after Commissioner Fox.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question right now about the POCD, but I've been wondering if this is a public hearing, why aren't we hearing from the public? I don't think
I don't
that,
believe there's any public on right now. I'll have to check with James. Any public on yet, James?
No public in attendance. We just have NCTV still.
Okay, thank you. We will open it up for questions to anybody, Commissioner Fox, as soon as we go through. Do you have anything else, Commissioner Fox?
no, I'll just reiterate, we're not on the agenda here for comments by the commission. All we're on the agenda for is possible action, but go right ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Braverman, do you have
Okay.
something?
Just a point of order. I didn't hear it said that I was seated as a commissioner because another commissioner is not in attendance. I just wondered if that's a point of order that I should be making.
I'll sorry for that, Commissioner Braverman. We'll have you seating for the, who's that for, Craig?
Either Commissioner or Woods.
Commissioner Woods. So Commissioner Braverman, you'll be sitting for Commissioner Woods. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to, Craig, do you have any other questions?
I just wanted to make an observation. The point that Commissioner Claffey brought up about the apparent contradiction in Mr. Chalder's suggestions on page 46. What Glenn is suggesting is that we continue to find ways to expand the public parking area, but at the same time reduce the amount of parking required for each individual business. So it's not really a conflict. It's two different sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Wait, let me ask a
I
question.
want to go back to Commissioner Claffey. Go ahead, Commissioner Claffey.
Well, I guess in the downtown, there's public parking in the back that businesses are using as a calculation factor for their business. So like the businesses that all face Main Street, we allow them to use the municipal public parking lot in some of their calculations. So that does become a problem if you then want to say in 5 years, someone comes in and says, oh, I want to put like on page 41, a 3-story mixed use building where the plumbing supply house is. And, how are you going to allow them to calculate their parking if the next block over, they can use a municipal parking lot as a calculation? So it kind of, I don't know how they go hand in hand or how we can differentiate. If we start differentiating parking and say, okay, X percent is for municipal and X percent is for the business. Well, that's different than what we currently do, et cetera, et cetera. It's a fine line here with parking because parking is inevitably like's been discussed that it's going to choke your growth or it's going to help your growth. You're right. Like the Berlin Turnpike, God, if we need 500 cars at Lowe's, it's no problem. But if you go try to put 500 cars at, maybe over in a different part of like Aldi parking lot, you can't do it.
So you're basically concerned, Commissioner Claffey, that we want to be careful with our parking count in the town center. For instance, if there was a new complex or a new building at where the factory is, that's like a block away from the municipal parking. So they'd probably have to have their own parking because they could maybe use a little bit of the municipal, but that municipal parking lot is pretty full and we've taken spaces away from it in the past to create the green space there. So
and you're right. Like if we're using that building to give calculations for business on Main Street, like it's not a proper way to figure out your parking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Commissioner Braverman, did you have a question? Commissioner Braverman?
Yes, I'm here. One of my questions is, and I know we're talking about the downtown, but the surrounding downtown is the Berlin Turnpike, and we have a number of situations where there are big box stores that are closed and that are emptying. The Pier 1 that's going to be emptying out, and I'm just kind of curious that that's not been addressed.
Well, I think somebody's moving into the Pier 1 facility over there. So it's unfortunate that we lost a tenant over there, but I think that gradually, hopefully, these empty spaces get filled up again. Is there any questions from any other non-commissioners? Any counselors have questions, or if there's any other public on? We haven't received the commissioners. I'm not sure how you want to proceed too much with
I
this
have a
because
question, Commissioner Payne.
Sure, Commissioner Sobieski. Hello.
Glenn, a quick question. You know, years ago, there was some talk about trying to do Market Square, make that a one-way eastbound and put diagonal parking in to increase the ability of parking in that area. Did you look at that at all when you were looking at the downtown area?
Not specifically, because I think the recommendation that I have for the commission, based on my experience, is to undertake this community-driven planning process to sit down and actually start to look at those types of questions, Stan. I think the issue ends up being, I'm a big fan of diagonal on-street parking, but I think that its applicability, you really got to get out there and measure the curbing and everything else, and you got to figure out what sort of building heights and types you're going to have and how this is all going to function. So I think it's an important thing for a downtown area. I would encourage the commission to consider that as part of that community planning process.
I know when they did that, they put the bump outs on and took a lot of parking away from the businesses down there. And, you know, if you want to try to become business friendly, that might be something we might want to look at.
Yep.
That's only a thought.
No, I agree. And I think the only thing I'd add to that too is that I think the other thing that's going on these days in downtown areas is making it pedestrian friendly. That, you know, you can have all the parking spaces in the world, but if it's a hostile environment, people aren't going to want to go there anyway. So we got to find that sweet spot and that balance that works really well for the center. And again, I think if some of the sites down there are going to get redeveloped, I think it's an opportunity that comes along once in a century. And I think being ready for that and being ready to work with property owners is going to be the key to success.
Okay, thank you.
I was just, like I said, I just thought about that. I've been thinking about this for a while. You could take Market Square midway down, say about 400 feet down, and make it one-way eastbound, allowing the bank to require traffic into bi-directional traffic. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Sobieski. Commissioner Braverman, do you have a question? If not, Commissioner Claffey.
I'm good.
I had a question for our town planner in regards to Glenn's plan on business development. If you turn to page 58, and how we have recently been talking about buffers and buffers between businesses and residential, et cetera, et cetera. How we haven't dived into it too much, Craig, but how does the action steps and stuff like that coincide with what we're kind of currently deal with in our town, and how would it better if we were to say enact these? Because there are some sites in town that you might not be able to get the 25-foot buffer, but hey, here's another way to get it done. I mean, does it go kind of okay with what we're trying to do in town?
Right, and that's what this plan recommends we do, is we sit down and take a closer look at our buffer regulations and come up with some more flexible ways to achieve the same goal, which is to protect residents from commercial development nearby, both of which are very important to Newington's character. And we haven't in the past, I don't think, done a good job of giving developers clear guidance as to what we require in terms of a landscape buffer between new development and residential neighborhoods.
Any other questions, Commissioner Claffey?
No,
Anybody else have any questions? James, is there any public on?
No public, still your, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Is there any counselors or TPZ representatives that would like to take the floor and have any questions? Okay.
Wait a
Any other?
minute. Oh, I could,
Hi, Gail.
yeah, no, I just want, it's not, I just want to reiterate that I believe Carol and I both gave significant input as this plan was being developed. So, you know, we've kept on top of it. We've read it. We've commented pretty extensively in the past. So it's not that we don't have any interest. It's just that we're curious now to see where this goes. Thank you.
Mhm. I'd like to know, Gail, is the council going to respond back with anything for us? Because I'd hate to move this forward if we're waiting for the counselors to respond to the
Well,
2020.
it's been on our agenda for as discussion for the past couple meetings, and the decision of the council was, I mean, we've reviewed it, but we wanted to wait to hear what the results of the public hearings were before we consolidated our comments to you.
Yeah, it's on our agenda for Tuesday evening pending this public hearing. Unfortunately, is this being live on NCTV? It is?
Supposed to be. Technical problems the other day.
Okay. Is there a way, I mean, I haven't seen, and maybe I'm the only one, but I haven't seen a lot out there about this. There was no press release or anything. Is there a way that you can have one more public hearing, and if nobody speaks, then move it forward? I'm just concerned that public isn't having the chance to really weigh in. I mean, 10 years ago, and you remember this, Dominic, I mean, we had tons of people
Yeah,
weigh in.
you're absolutely correct. And I know it was a concern of the counselors and even TPZ commissioners that we haven't had many public, and with this COVID virus, it's only made it worse. And I know that some people had wanted to possibly, create a meeting in person with social distancing to see if that would bring some people out just to hear their comments. And I'm open to any suggestions that either the TPZ representatives or commissioners have concerning that. Let's see, Commissioner Claffey?
I think in regards to that concern of the public input, I think I don't know what the time frame is or where we can get a more public approach to this back in four walls in a L101 type setting. Is there a time frame here, Mr. Minor, of?
Well, I would imagine with the COVID, we don't have to comply with any time regulations, even though there probably is a time regulation. Glenn's going to tell us, and Craig will tell us that there's a time regulation on this, but.
Because when there's a hot button item, we get a good amount of people that come into the meetings and voice their concerns. I think, can we put it on the agenda for, say, September? If we're back in a standard meeting type setting or more public, where maybe they come to a microphone outside the town hall to get piped into the I don't know. I don't think it's something that we have to close. I think we need to leave it open and just my suggestion is leave it open as long as we can and try to get some input through either the town website or a link there or through the town Facebook page. Not all the private pages, just the town specific page, to say, hey, we're trying to hold a meeting, on this date, just to get people to know what's going on.
Okay, Commissioner Claffey. Our town planner had a comment, I think. Go ahead, Craig.
Yes, the executive order did give us an additional 90 days to adopt the plan, which brings us to a deadline of September 8th, which is far enough away that if the commission wanted to keep the hearing open tonight to the next meeting, you could do that. So long as as the commission voted on the plan no later than your August 26th meeting. So Mr. Charlton and I built some flexibility into the schedule in case we got to this point and the commission decided that it wanted to keep the hearing open for another couple of weeks. So the answer is yes, we can keep the hearing open.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners' comments? Carol?
Yeah, one other thing. Can we get a press release or something out about this? I know the crier isn't mailing out, but the reminder is New Britain Herald's doing stuff online. I mean, a lot of people don't know that this public hearing was this evening, and if they're not, and I don't even think there was a lot of it on social media, and don't really follow that. But I think it just feels like a lot of this was done like under the radar, and I know because of COVID. But I really would like just to get a little bit more publicity on this. One last shot and see what happens.
Carol, what's your opinion of possibly having like an outside meeting? So that
I agree. I think anything that would bring people in to discuss this would be a benefit. I mean, even if you guys met and people watched it on NCTV, were able to call in. I think people aren't really sure that they can call in because you can't call in for TPZ. So maybe, you know, even I know there's changes in regulations because of COVID, but I mean, I didn't even know that you could call into the TPZ meeting until I asked Craig about that.
Mhm.
So I think that the public needs to be educated more how you guys are going to proceed with this. If you do one more public hearing, this is how we're going to handle it.
Okay, I'm going to thank you very much, Carol. Commissioner Haggerty.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a public attendee who has raised their hand to speak.
Okay, why don't we go to them and then we'll go to Commissioner Haggerty.
Absolutely, go ahead.
All right, I'll start with the first one. With phone number ending in 070, you should be unmuted now or allowing to.
Hello?
Not quite there yet. There we go.
I'm muted. I'm unmuted. It's
There you
Rose
go.
Lyons, 46 Elton Drive.
Hi, Rose.
Hi. I agree that this needs to be advertised more somehow. Something as important as this, I would have thought that someone other than myself would have been watching tonight. And quite honestly, I'm just wondering if there's anything on the town website. I'm sure the plan, is the proposed plan on the town website or not?
Craig, can you answer that for us?
Yeah, yes, it's on the town planner or the town planning and zoning website.
Okay.
thank you.
Is there some way that IT can put it in the beginning? It's terrible. This town website to me is very hard, it's not very friendly, user friendly, and it's hard to find things unless you know exactly what you're looking for. So if it were on there and people could look at it and go over it, and I'm watching you and I've been watching along at various times on the plan, but I'm still not, I'd have to sit down, really print it out or something. I don't know how many pages it is. I'd like to look it over. But in any case, if it can be somewhere on the town website, and it also, when at budget time, I think at one point, I don't know whether they did it this year or not, I asked the town manager if they could have a specific email address to mail questions to if people had them. I don't know with TPZ, with this type of thing, or whether that's allowable or not. But given the COVID situation, it's very hard for the public to participate. And I'm just thinking myself, I've seen people come out before to meetings, not a lot. I'm not saying you're going to get 100 people to a meeting, but at least afford them the opportunity to look at the plan, have a place where they can ask questions or give them information through the media. I have not seen anything, and I could be mistaken, about this public hearing and the impact it may have for the next 10 years on the residents of this town. So just as a person who's been following this and was there for the 2020 plan, I would urge you to think about not closing it tonight. Give it some publicity, and if nobody shows up, nobody calls rather, nobody writes in, nobody does anything, then so be it. They had their opportunity. But I'd hate to have somebody come back and say, I never knew anything about this, and this went through without my knowledge. But like I say, you may not get anyone, but just my opinion, having watched before.
Well, I completely understand, Rose, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you all stay safe and stay well.
Thank you. Commissioner Haggerty?
Yes, thank you. I'm kind of new, so I guess I'm curious, what is the, I hate asking rhetorical questions, but what is the normal process by which, information about hearings are disseminated? I guess, so if this was pre-COVID, I feel like it wouldn't be an issue. Somehow the public would just know about it. And now that it's COVID, the public doesn't know about it. Was something done differently? Like, if we somehow make it public for people to show up in a parking lot, it's assumed that people will show up. But if we make it public that people can sign onto a computer, then nobody will do that. I guess I'm not following that, but.
I don't know whether it's they're not showing up on the computer and they might not show up in the parking lot either. I think part of it is that there's no big issues like we had the last time go around. There was a large issue with the open space and Safe Cedar Mountain at the time we were going through the last plan of development. So there was hundreds of people attending and commenting. And I just don't think we have that one big issue right now. But I can understand some of the concerns where they want to make sure that the public is covered here.
Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Gill?
Yeah, I'm all in on Rose's request there. I think that's a very important part of this. Start, conversations of what the people are concerned about, because we'll go to this meeting we're talking about, and we're not going to know what they're going to be talking about. And I think if we could get some kind of communication avenue, email address that we could start communicating back and forth.
Good point. Thank you, Commissioner. Gail, did you have a question?
No, just a comment, and kind of similar, I guess, to what Ms. Lyons had said, is that perhaps, if we get the public publicity out there, and it would be good maybe if a tiny little blurb can be, created by the town planner that can be put on the multiple Newington Facebook pages, and just say that, with the link on how to read it. But also, since people maybe are still nervous to come out to a public meeting, even if it is September, October, if they can be invited to send their comments via email, that might be a way.
Okay.
But I also do agree, last time, being one of the hundreds of people who sat in the auditorium, there seemed to be more significant changes to the plan and issues at that time, particularly development of the mountain. And there were even some significant issues about Newington Center. So I'm not sure the public will be as interested, because an awful lot of issues that aren't identified in this plan, for example, a train station, the busway, whatever, have already been done or covered in other meetings, and they're part of this plan already. So it's not an opportunity to really comment on the idea per se. But I think the opportunity to, provide an easy link and to provide mail-in comments. I mean, there's just so much, you can't lead, a horse to water, or whatever that saying is. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Annis?
Yeah, one other thing, Glenn, didn't you have an email set up when we did the charrettes?
I think we did. I'm going to check on that. I think it's, I'm just going to send an email right now to what I think it's POCD at newingtonct.gov. So I'm just going to check it real quick, and I'll let you know in a moment.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we did.
Craig, do you have something you'd like to add?
No, actually.
Okay. Any other commissioners have a question?
Mr. Chair, so either way, we have to vote on this, and we have 1 month max, correct? Like, we have one meeting to talk about it again, and then the very next meeting, it's going to happen one way or the other?
I think by what you said, by the end of August, Craig?
Yes. Right. Unless you have special meetings, the August 26th meeting is your last meeting to adopt the plan on schedule.
On schedule, but we could go off schedule if we had to, if we felt we wanted to, correct?
Well, you can. The consequences are, if the town doesn't meet the deadline, the consequences would impact if we apply for grants. We would have to explain grant application.
I think with the COVID that we would have plenty of cover, because the 90 days for the COVID is really, you could use more of that, but hopefully we can get this resolved by the end of August. I think what I should do is discuss with Craig how we can get some news articles out there, possibly with an email address and requesting questions from the public. And then we can talk right now about whether or not you guys want to hold another public hearing or not.
Mr. Chalder has some comments, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lenars?
No, Mr. Chalder does.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to bring the commission's attention to something with regard to the time frame. I think all the comments here tonight, I think it makes sense to continue the public hearing. I think the council's going to weigh in on comments. They should do that before the close of the public hearing, so they give them an opportunity to do that. I'd be happy to work with Craig and you, Mr. Chairman, in terms of press releases and all of the other stuff. I did want the commission to know that OPM has become a little bit more robust in terms of their approach to the deadline. I believe the question was raised before as to whether or not there might be any flexibility with regard to COVID. And the state's response was, we gave you 90 days. If you're going to go over the 90 days, you need to ask for an extension or you fall into the abyss.
Okay.
So I just,
So
I think that for the sake of 2 weeks, even if we were to continue this through, I'm not sure when your meeting might be in September, if the commission wanted to do a special meeting, we just need to attach a letter to any grant applications during that, window. So I think we can continue this to August, continue our efforts, see what we get. And if you want to continue it beyond that, we can do that as well. So whatever your pleasure is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Is Commissioner Lenars, do you have a question?
Yeah, no question. I just feel compelled that I have to chime in. I'm not a big echoer of thoughts, but I'm going to echo a lot of people's thoughts because I happen to agree. I think the public participation, even though it's on our agenda, I don't know how many people actually go to our agenda to see what's going on or whatnot. And I think that the path couldn't be any simpler, as what Carol brought up and Rose. I think that maybe commit to having this stay open to one more meeting, but in the meantime, make the efforts going forward to getting some press releases, going to some of the web pages, whether it be through the admins of these Newington pages or the town web page directly, doing our due diligence to make sure that the public is informed of what's going on and give them one more shot for sure, whether it be via email, calling in, Zoom meetings. I don't think you're going to get any better response if you prolong this and you go to some forum where people come and meet in person. I think people are still weary of that, and it's their right to do so. But I do feel very comfortable with having one more meeting, if this be open, and then taking into consideration what they say, having the council weigh in on it, of course, and then wrapping this thing up. And I think the reason for the velocity of this is because the plan is really good. The plan is good. It's specific in some respect, and it's vague in another respect where it allows different directions of plan and development to exist in the future. I also think that the hot button issues that you touched on, Mr. Chairman, are not here this particular time. And it's just your regular development going forward. And I think it's a good plan. I would be in favor of another public hearing for the public. And then after that, going to the necessary steps to comply with the extension of the 90 days that we were already given, and then wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenars. James, we have Patty Foley's in the webinar room. Is it possible? She has a comment. Is it possible to connect to her?
If her number is 994, yeah, well, I can unmute that for you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Are you there, Patty?
Yes, I am. Good evening. How are you? Good
Hi,
evening,
Patty. Go ahead.
Chairman Payne, and everybody there. I want to first, as the chair of the Environmental Quality Commission and Sustainable Connecticut, looking for our Sustainable Award for Newington. This POCD is an amazing document. I have read it. I want to commend the commission and the staff for working on this. It's tremendous. It is a wonderful document. as the last one was 10 years ago, which really helped steer the community a course to improve Newington. So I'm looking forward to being able to speak out and like I said, maybe there's an opportunity in a couple of weeks with a few more folks to understand how important it is to speak out on this. But I do wanted to thank you for all the time and effort you did to put this together, because I know you've been working on it for probably over almost a year. Congratulations. I think it's a great plan. I think it does point to the challenges that are faced Newington. So, which is a good place to start with the plan. So thank you very much.
Very good, Patty. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Commissioner Fox, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, actually, it's basically a statement. And like Commissioner Linares, I'm not one for, kind of just reiterating or going along with people. But we spoke about this at the last meeting, and I think consensus was we should get this going. But evidently, we were wrong. And as everybody else says, we need to get this in a venue where we can get more public participation. Emails, this might be a good idea, but until we get out on social media, which is really right now, I hate to say it, the basic, the basic mode of communication in this time of COVID and technology, but we need not only to let people know that we're holding public hearings on our plan of development, which everybody should be interested in. I think Rose brought up a situation or a fact that I'm quite aware of. The website is not ready to place. I don't know how much information you can get out to the public on social media, but I think the public should be able to at least review the POCD, because if they don't see what's in it, they wouldn't have any questions. And so we also have to figure out how to get I think Rose said this, get the public to be able to read and review and know what questions to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox. Councilor Pedreco, did you have a comment?
No.
Okay. So I think I gather what we want to do then is I'll work with the town planner and Glenn, and we'll try to come up with some publicity to put on the town page and maybe share it with some Facebook sites and maybe a couple of articles encouraging people to send their questions in through email. And maybe we can also let them know and give them directions on how to get on the website to review the plan so that they can read it. And we'll see how that works for our next meeting. Commissioner Claffey, do you have a question or comment?
I was asking, can we make a motion to keep this open till our second meeting in August for our next discussion on this? And
Absolutely. Yep, you can make that motion.
Make a motion to keep this meeting, this public hearing open in regards to the POCD 2020 plan until our second meeting in August. I don't know the date specifically.
Okay, motion made. Do I have a
second?
Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fox. And any discussion?
Could I just point out that if you continue the hearing to August 26th, that's your deadline. You're going to have to adopt it that night, and that's kind of cutting it close.
Well, we will.
Next meeting, August 12th.
Well, we'll keep it open until the 20th. Well, let's have it on the agenda on the next meeting open, and then we can decide then if we want to keep it open for the 26th. We could keep it open for the 26th, and then at that meeting, we could move it to old business and act on it. Right?
You could, but I just think that's kind of cutting it close. That's all.
So let me ask this: if Mr. Planner, with all the times and things, if we keep it open to the next meeting and have an update of where we're at with everything that everyone has asked about, is the public being informed? Is a newspaper going to run an article? Is a website going to post something? Is a social media site? At that time, we'll have a better understanding where we are with all the concerns of our commissioners and our counselors. And then we're at a better stance of keeping it open till our following meeting. Is that a better plan?
I think so.
So I make I'll retract my original motion. I make a motion that we keep this hearing open for the POCD until our first meeting in August and move it accordingly.
And I'll retract my second, and I'll second the new movement, the new motion.
Could you go over that one time, Commissioner Claffey?
So I make a motion, I retract my original motion, and I make a new motion that we keep the Newington 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development public hearing tonight open until our
August
August
12th
meeting to discuss where we're at with all the concerns that all the stakeholders currently in this meeting have and any public concerns.
Okay, motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, before
Yes.
you pass your motion, I do have an attendee with their hand raised.
Okay. All right. You can put them through.
Okay.
Hi, it's Rose Lyons, 46 Alton Drive. I know I'm sitting here watching this and hearing it half in my phone and half on the TV. And on the TV, it's saying public hearing, Newington 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development proposal or proposed for adoption. I think Commissioner Claffey also referred to it as the 2020 plan. Aren't we doing the 2030 plan?
It's the 2020 to 2030 plan. Because the last
Okay.
one was the 2010 to the 2020 plan. So
Okay,
it's
because on the public hearing on the agenda, it says proposed plan of conservation and development 2030, proposed POCD 2030. I just wanted to be sure. So I understand it's 20, wasn't the 2010 to 2020 referred to as the 2020 plan?
Yeah, I
my
think
error,
it
Mr.
was. It confuses me too.
That was my error in typing.
the last plan of development was the 2010 plan to the 2020. And then the
Okay, no,
plan
I
before-
understand.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Just
Thank
for
you.
clarification, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and we have a second by, who was it?
Fox.
Commissioner Fox. We have a motion and a second to keep this plan open until, what was it, Anthony?
The August 12th meeting.
August 12th meeting, and then we can determine then what we're going to do with it. Any other comments concerning this motion?
Mr. Minor has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Unmute, Greg.
I just keep getting it backwards. Whether I need to click raise hand to take it down or to raise.
You're all set, Craig? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. There's no comments.
I have a
can we-
comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Braverman.
I just want to make sure that the posting that's on the city website, Newington website, that the POCD get a prominent position in it, so that when people first come to the site, they'll be able to see the POCD document.
I'm not sure. Whatever is possible in the IT department, they'll try to accommodate that. I'm not sure if they can, but we certainly, Craig, if you could make a note of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor. We have it seconded. There's no other comments. Could we have a roll call vote, please, Craig?
Commissioner Claffey,
Yes.
Commissioner Fox,
Yep.
Commissioner Havens,
Yes.
Commissioner Linares,
Yes.
Commissioner Sobieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Gill,
Yes.
Commissioner Braverman,
Yes.
Commissioner Haggerty,
Yes.
Chairman Payne.
Yes. Okay, so we'll leave that open then. Is there anybody in the public? Anybody have anything else? If there's nothing else, I will work with the town planner and I will work with our consultant to come up with some article to get out to the public and try to encourage them to look up the plan on our webpage and try to share it on social media. And as soon as I come up with something and I work that out with the planner and our consultant, then I will have the town planner email all the commissioners to tell them what the plan is, if that's okay with everybody. And if there's no other public participation, or if there's nothing else, and if there's no objection, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion adjourned.
Motion made and seconded.
Second.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the meeting. I appreciate it. And thank you, James. And we'll see everybody at the next meeting.
Good night, all.
Good night,
night.
all.
Good night, everyone.